What's going on, everybody? This is James Grandmaster Facts Boyce, and welcome back to the Facts Project. It's been a long hiatus, but I appreciate everybody joining me today. Special guest, if I'm saying it correctly, Brett Hillesheim.
You got it, man. You got it.
You know what? I got it on the first try. I was trying that shit all day. All right. You may know him from Indie Comic Dispatch, but today he is on the other side of this, where he's not doing the interviews, and we are going to talk about Immortalis, his first storyline, printed and published with Wingless Comics. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you for having me. It's so weird to be on this side and like not be in control. So I'm going to do my best to just sit here and let you ask the questions.
You know what? I appreciate it because, well, first and foremost, I have to bring up the fact that me and you have sort of the same like-minded spirit in indie comics. Mm-hmm. You doing Indie Comic Dispatch for as long as you have, me doing the Facts Project as long as I've have. And the majority of it is that we love the stories that we put together, the stories that we talk about. Yeah. And pretty much, I'm looking at the back of your wall. I can see tons of comics back there. Yeah. I literally have this one shelf. I mean, you can't see beyond me or anything like that, but I understand exactly where you're coming from. Like you are a fan of a lot of indie comics, a lot of indie stories that are put out there for you, and you get to talk about them on a weekly or better yet monthly basis, which is all by the means great. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, huge fan of indie comics. I just think that the storylines we get, the characters we get are so much real, so much more authentic than the mainstream publishers. It's you just can't find the stories that you find in indie comics anywhere else. I love it.
That's true. And that is a perfect segue into what we are going to talk about, and that is Immortalis. Yes. So when we're bringing up this specific storyline, you decided to go into the genre of historical fantasy.
Yep.
Why did you choose to do that?
So it really has been all about the fall of Constantinople. When I was an undergraduate in college, I had to take a medieval history class. I don't even remember why I had to take a medieval history class, but I had to. And I was so not looking forward to it, but I had the best professor in the world. And he told us through the course of that class about the fall of Constantinople. And there were several kind of big movies out at the time. I remember Two Towers was one of them that had just been out, Lord of the Rings, and of course the Battle of Helm's Deep and that. And he told about the fall of Constantinople in such a way that I was just like, why is nobody talking about this? Why hasn't there been a blockbuster movie made of this? Like, this is an awesome story. And over, 20 plus years now, that story just sparked creativity in me and just evolved in my head to the point where it's history. It's based on the fall of Constantinople, but my brain has just added all these fantasy elements to it because there's a lot of myths and legends that sprung up among the people of that area around the fall of Constantinople. So it's a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah, and for a lot of people that do not understand this, we're talking about the Ottoman Empire, we're talking about the Byzantine Empire, we are talking about what you may know now as modern day Istanbul, which is Turkey.
Yep.
You know? So for a lot of people that do not know, this is one of the Roman last ports and posts that they had. It is, of course, a signature hub of connection between Europe and Asia and Africa because of where it stands geographically.
Yeah.
So we're looking at I remember We Might Be Giants, the Animaniacs episode where it was Istanbul was Constantinople. There was like a song.
Yeah, there's a song. Yeah.
There's a song, Istanbul was Constantinople. I remember that song.
Yep. There's nobody's business but the Turks.
Right. Right. See, look, you be on the same damn page.
Yep.
But more so, when you were putting this together, not a lot of people like to dive into any type of historical or factual prowess when they're putting their books together. You decided to basically like take this chunk of historical fact and then mold it into a world of fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did this come about? Because no, as long as you've been a lover of indie comics, this is your first go around of basically publishing your own indie work.
Yeah.
Why this?
Again, the story's just been in my head. And as so Brian Lambert of Wingless Comics and I have been friends, and he has been kind of part of Indie Comics Dispatch in the background since close to its inception, really. He's always been an ear I could bend and just talk to stuff, get feedback on. Um, and so through the course, he was always kind of hammering me, Brett. I know you got a story. I know you got a story. I know you got a story. When are you going to tell it? When are you going to tell it? Um, and so my story has always been the fall of Constantinople. The great book I was always going to write was going to be on that. In my mind, it was a novel. And as you start kind of going through some of the myths and legends that sprung up around it that are kind of major, that are kind of central, that in every retelling of the fall of Constantinople, people mention. There's a mysterious blue glowing that happens over the main church in Constantinople called the Hagia Sophia. That nobody knows what happened to Emperor Constantine. He leads the charge as the Ottomans are invading the city, and he disappears. And there's this whole lore and mythology that follows that story. And then there's all these kind of myths and legends of demons and characters around it, that kind of helped contribute to the fall, because they didn't like Rome or whatever. And so that's synergizing that with the historical facts, right? So that what we know happened, and then taking into account all these myths and legends, just kind of helped it evolve along the way into a fantasy story, because you can't incorporate those myths and legends without ultimately making it a fantasy story.
Now, if you could
Mm-hmm.
explain some of the characters that are involved in this book.
Yeah, so there's really five main characters, that we get to see. Constantine, Emperor Constantine the 11th. He's the last kind of Roman emperor. Um, the Western Empire would say he's the last of the Eastern Empire. He would say he's the last of the Roman Empire, because this was really the Roman Empire's last stand right here. This was it. Italy at that point, actual Rome, was taken over by the papacy. The Roman Empire was hanging by a thread out here in Constantinople. So Constantine is very central to the story, because it's his city. In real life and in our story, Constantine is searching. He sees the writing on the wall. He knows what's going to happen within his lifetime to his city. The Ottoman Empire is growing stronger and stronger. They are taking more and more territory, and he knows what's going to happen. So he is desperately searching for a way to save his city. And in our story, we take it altruistically and say he's trying to find a way to save his people.
Right.
Now, in actuality, real Constantine probably was just trying to figure out a way to hold on to power. But
Right.
in our story, our character does it for the motivation of good. Constantine's kind of number two man is Lucas, again based on a real historical character. He's the Grand Duke of the Byzantine Navy, and he's in our story. In our story, he's Constantine's best friend. He's the one who kind of keeps him grounded, in the here and now, as Constantine is searching for the there's a prophecy, and Constantine's trying to search for what this prophecy means. And so Lucas kind of keeps pulling him back to reality. Um, and then the kind of unknown in the story is Gailu. She's a immortal. Now Gailu's based on a Byzantine myth,
Okay.
about a demon woman who goes around and murders newborn infants. So that was their way of explaining probably SIDS and other things that happen to babies.
Okay.
And so, but in our story, Gailu has that past, but she's trying to change her story essentially, and it's yet to be seen how that's going to happen. Um,
Okay. Because
and then,
the way
go
I was
ahead.
looking, I'm sorry, the way I was looking at it from the beginning is that like I the way I see Emperor Constantine, like pretty much when he's seeing that there's pretty much danger approaching and there's pretty much no way out, he's
Yeah.
looking towards like a supernatural type of stretch to
Yes.
aid him
Yes. Yeah.
and to gain advantage.
Yep, yep. There's been this prophecy that the Oracle of Patras had given, and he's been trying to figure it out. He thinks it pertains to him. He thinks it pertains to his city. He just can't figure out how.
Mm.
So that's kind of where the story begins, is him trying to unravel this mystery of the prophecy.
Now, is it more so manipulation? Is it more so seduction? Is it more so it's not that he's being coerced, it's more so that he's just like,
He's
you know
just
what?
desperate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I was thinking like he's just desperate for the help.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like he's not seeing any means in doing so from any allegiances that he's made in the past.
Yep.
Like, okay, if I'm gonna do this, I pretty much gotta like commit to the mark of the beast and go for it here. If there's only one way to regain power or to stay
Mm-hmm.
in power, it's to forfeit myself to
Mm-hmm.
these supernatural spirits and let that take over, and then let its work its way out.
To a large degree, yeah. So yeah, he at the beginning, when this prophecy is given, he doesn't know there's supernatural happenings, and he slowly starts figuring it out. And throughout the course, Immortalis will be a 4-part series, and throughout the course of the series, he does exactly what you say. He begins to gamble with in his head what he's going to do. Do I just surrender to these forces so that my people can live? Do I fight? Do I run? What do I do? So he's always struggling with that in his
Right.
head.
Now, is it more so for the sake of his people, or is he pretty much selfish and just looks is looking out for himself?
In our story, he's motivated by his people. He is good natured.
Okay.
Now, there's always a little bit of selfishness there that I think he wrestles with, and a little bit of ego, which he thinks that he can be the one to figure it out. He can be the one to save his people, and that's all things he's going to have to deal with as the series progresses. Is can he? Should he be the only one? Should he be the one even that does all this? Is there a one even? So, um, his character flaws are ego and probably pride. Um,
Mm.
yeah,
Well, pride being one of the seven deadly sins, I didn't
exactly.
think that it essentially helps his case. Um,
Yeah.
now, when we're looking at this from the end of how this is going to take place, this is a 4-part story
Hmm.
from the ways that you're basically putting this together.
Yep.
There is an issue 0.
There
So
is. Yeah.
there's a prequel to this. Now, where does this configure in the overall story?
So issue 0 technically takes place. We don't really pin it down, but in the history of that region, it would have taken place about 20 years before issue 1. Um, so issue 0 is available for free on Wingless Entertainment's website. You can download it for free, and kind of see it. And it's just kind of that first chance meeting between Constantine and Gailu and Lucas, and it kind of just gives a tiny. It's only 4 pages, so it's not very long, but it gives a tiny bit of insight into their characters.
Mm, okay.
Yep.
So, like, as far as Guy Lu's intentions,
Mm-hmm.
and what does she hope to gain in this coercion, if you want to call it that, of Constantine, and how this is going to move forward for her? I know she's like sort of like in a not a power struggle, but in a struggle mentally to be like
Yeah.
she's looking to be well liked, or she's looking to like live amongst the living.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we've released what's called the Book of Gailu Part One. So of everything I'm about to say, you can actually read if you have gotten the latest issue of Jibba Anderson's 4 pages, 16 bars. It's part of that anthology series. Um, but Gailu originally was an agent of hell. So when the war broke out between heaven and hell, she sided with Morningstar. She sided with him because she just always wanted freedom, and she felt that God put restrictions on people, and she just wanted to live her life. And so she joined Morningstar for freedom. Through joining with Morningstar, she became an immortal. He gave her certain powers, and her task was to go around and slay the newborn image bearers, just like in the Byzantine myth of Gailu.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was out there doing that for years, for centuries. And eventually she came to a stable one evening, newborn baby in a stable. Um,
Mm,
and it was a different type of baby, and she just kind of saw the truth of what she had been doing, and she abandoned her mission. She abandoned everything. and has since been wandering ports, just trying to seek to do good in any way she can. So her motivation is self-redemption, but sometimes she goes about it in ways that we wouldn't see as redemption because her mind has been so darkened for so long and been in such a dark spot. Her means of self-redemption sometimes we wouldn't agree with.
Now, is she looking to pretty much, I guess, cancel out the fact that she wants to be an immortal going forward?
She doesn't at this point. It's yet to be seen if she can cancel that. Even she's
Uh,
just looking to avoid hell and do whatever she can to do good. Now she does have an ulterior motive for showing up in Constantinople. So she's not there out of all altruism. She's there for her own purposes also, which we'll discover as the series goes on.
oh, okay. Now,
Yeah.
when you're bringing up the immortals
Mm-hmm.
and bringing up the fact that she was an agent of hell,
Mm-hmm.
what exactly is your definition of the immortals in this story, as opposed to how they're described in many others?
So in this story, they are bound to a particular demon or angel of hell. So an angel of hell grants them powers, and in granting them powers from themselves, they are also granted immortality, just like the angel of hell is. And so for Gailu and for another antagonist within the stories named Zaganos, they are both immortals who were granted abilities from a demon or an angel of hell. And so they are kind of certain areas of the globe have been called under truths by this war between heaven and hell. Certain time periods, they can't, the forces can't engage one another. But these agents, these immortal agents who are technically human, they can keep doing hell's dirty work. So whereas heaven might be like, okay, hands off, we're not battling right now, you guys. Hell's still working their angle with their immortal agents.
Wow. Okay. So now you described another character, Zaganos. Now,
Mm-hmm.
where does he fit in the overall scheme of this story?
He is so ultimately, he is an agent of hell who has been tasked with capturing Gailu. And there's a organization within Wingless Comics called the Magistrato. They're kind of the hell behind this stage curtain, manipulating things. And they have tasked Zaganos with not only capturing Gailu, but also manipulating the Ottomans into attacking Constantinople.
Mm. So
So
there's
he's
it's pretty much an overall scheme in nature.
Yep, yep. So he is the one pushing the Sultan's buttons and motivating the Sultan to maybe attack Constantinople before he was going to.
Okay. So I am going to reference another storyline which mentions the Ottoman Empire. Have you ever heard of the movie by Terry Gilliam called Adventures of Baron Munchausen?
Yes, although it's been forever since I've seen that movie, but I remember watching that movie so many times on HBO growing up.
Right. So this story, of course, is a reference to the Ottoman Empire. It is a historical fantasy tale
Mm-hmm.
about the Sultan being manipulated by supernatural powers, uh which in present day you wouldn't think there's supernatural powers, but
Right.
he is being dissolved by a force that is causing him to I guess act on the last stand of of the Ottoman Empire. So
Mm-hmm.
like that was one movie when I was reading the summary of this book, I was like, wow. I was like, hold on. I was like, this is bringing me back to the 80s. And I'm thinking
Yeah.
Baron Munchausen, where he is a past Roman soldier who has to go through literally hell
Mm-hmm.
and then come
Mm-hmm.
back out with his band of pretty much superhuman type army, one that can hear very well, one that can is supreme eyesight, that can shoot
Yeah.
within like 1,000 yards away, one that is very strong, and one that can run very fast like the Flash. So
Yeah, I remember
like
all that
he
now.
almost
Yeah.
had like superhuman beings that
Yeah.
had aiding him in this battle, and it was all against the Sultan of Turkey within
Mm-hmm.
that time. So this storyline, even though it's very serious in presence, and of course that Terry Gilliam brought that out to be almost like a comedy,
Yep.
some sort of
Yep.
it kind of resonated with me when I was reading the summary going forth. So that kudos to you, bro. Like it made me go back to the past. And I actually, when I was reading this, I was like, let me watch Baron Munchausen again.
That's hilarious because like I said, I remember watching that, but in my brain, that wasn't anywhere in my conscious brain as I was coming up with this story. But now I got to go rewatch it just to see, like,
Absolutely, man. There's
yeah,
a lot of great actors in that movie.
yeah,
And
yeah,
there's a young Uma Thurman as cute
yeah,
Aphrodite in there. You
yeah.
know, like
There's
there's
a ton of actors in that one.
ton like John Cleese, Monty Python
Mm-hmm.
actors in that
Mm-hmm.
storyline.
Yep.
Definitely. So you mentioned what you mentioned the Magistrados, you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
Morning Star.
Mm-hmm.
The connection now.
Mm-hmm.
We're now crossing a bridge
Yeah.
to
Yeah. So.
Wingless Comics. So of course now we're talking about Brian Lambert's of course 4 issue. I think we're in his 4th issue, and of course he's had Nightfall, which has been
Mm-hmm.
his crossover with Constant Hustle Comics, as well as if I'm Concept Moon.
Concept Moon. Yep.
Concept Moon. So like this whole story parallels
Mm-hmm.
into that universe per se, because you mentioned Morningstar
Yep.
being, and of course with if anybody in here has read indie comics and have read Justice, you know that he is a merchant
Mm-hmm.
of heaven, and of course does a lot of his business with hell,
Yep.
with Caliburn and a lot of the other characters that are pretty much bored out there. And yet Morningstar is one of these characters. Now the manipulation of a person like Morningstar, basically pinpointing and strategically placing a person like Gailu within the
Mm-hmm.
story to have a historical landmark in a war that you wouldn't think that this person would need to be at. Where does this all take place now?
So Brian and I have had so many conversations about this. So when I finally told him my story idea, he was like, "Now, if you don't publish this with Wingless Comics, I'm going to be really mad at you, and I'm not going to be your friend anymore."
Mm,
Brian.
that's
Um, and so I was like, well, I'm only telling you because I want to publish it with Wingless. Now, where does this fit? And so we had lots of conversations on where this fit, and really, the this 4-part series of Immortalis kind of builds out some of that early lore for the what we call the Wingverse. So there's stuff that's being created and set into permanent Wingless lore as part of the series. So Brian and I worked very closely together to incorporate those things into the story in a way that makes sense across all titles. Because you got Justice, you got Caliburn, you got Her, you got Lux coming down the line, you got the Saber Initiative. I mean, there's a whole line of Wingless comics going to be coming out in the next year or so that this kind of helps set in motion what's happening in the background of all those. And so there's actually already been an Immortalis. I'm not going to tell you where. If you can find it, good for you. There's already been an Immortalis character that appeared in a Justice comic.
Look, I got them all here. Now I gotta go look through this.
Yep, yep. Um, and within Immortalis, there will be so many Easter eggs of things that you've seen in Justice and Nightfall as the story progresses. So it's really weaving that early world building lore of the whole Wingverse.
That goddamn Brian Lambert.
Yep.
All
Yep.
right. So in my talks, and note, I've had probably 3 good long talks with Brian here on the podcast about whether it's been Justice or it has been Nightfall. And I remember us talking about the Saber Initiative. I remember us talking about Lux. I remember us talking about Her. I remember us even talking about Immortalis. And within this particular storyline, within Immortalis, I was wondering, okay, is this more so the precursor for what was happening in present day? Nightfall ended up being this climactic conclusion, this ultimate crossover. Justice then superseded that, going forth and having another climax all its own, almost like its own volume by itself.
Yep.
Then we're looking at Immortalis as like the beginning.
Yeah.
Like we had to pretty much pull back
Yeah.
almost a good 400 years
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
actually
Yeah. 500, 600 years, almost 600 years. Yeah.
600 years,
Yeah.
600 years to actually like be like, okay, what initially started the campaign going forward
Hmm.
that ultimately there would be this big climax where, you had all these trade issues that were going to go forward. Now we're pulling back 400 years to actually like where it started. So
Yeah.
basically there had to be like turmoil that was building
Hmm.
within this series, within Immortalis, that essentially that was going to be the foregone conclusion that was going to rest assured all these books going forth.
Yep.
So I gotta say, as someone who loves indie comics and just loves storylines in general, to see that, I was like, there had to be so much strategy going into this, because that sounds nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because these stories are already done. This is like
Hmm.
7 stories that are already done. It
Yep.
maybe even 8.
Yeah. I mean, Brian has, I think, through issue 5 of Justice all scripted out already. So, like, yeah, like, so
Mhm.
there's 10 solid issues at least that are scripted. The cool thing is that when I came to Brian with my idea, he was like, a lot of this fits unchanged. Like, we just got to tweak some terms to make it fit within Wingless Comics, but this is spot on. So, like, Brian and I just had this connection from the get, and it just revealed itself in our storytelling. We were telling the same story in 2 different time periods. We just didn't know it at first.
Mm. You know what? There's a reason that I get to talk to you guys, man, because I tend to find out a lot of things out that most of the readers don't get to see. And the
Yeah.
thing is, you wouldn't know so unless you actually like bought all of
Yep.
the comics.
Yep.
So I implore everybody before we even continue talking to get into basically buying up all the issues of Justice, buying up all the issues of Nightfall. If you have the Saber Initiative, which was a kind of like a companion package,
Yeah.
the last issue of Justice, and then now we're going backwards. So like if we're talking about let's put in the essence of the Star Wars universe.
Hmm.
Everybody understands the Skywalker saga, but you had to understand Rogue One to know exactly be like, okay, this is where it began. This is
Yep.
where like basically all the reason that the Rebel Alliance pretty much wanted to be gung ho in destroying the Empire so far, all derived from this moment. So there,
Hmm.
so I'm going to look at this storyline, even though it's 4 issues.
Hmm.
That there's a signature moment in this books that is pretty much going to be the telltale fact that goes into the Wingverse and be like, okay, this is the reason
Yeah.
why all this happened.
Yeah. Yeah. There'll still be some mysteries, that we hold back, obviously, for future storylines. But yeah, you'll get great understanding of what is going on between heaven and hell, and kind of the players happening here, from this series.
Mm. And no, that's absolutely great. Now, aside from this tale, and of course, this is still live on Kickstarter right
Yeah.
now. How,
Yep.
how many days you got left?
We got like barely over 2 weeks left, so the campaign ends on September 16th.
That's absolutely great. And you're
Yeah.
already funded.
Yeah, already funded, already met our first stretch goal, working towards our second stretch goal, which is a Gailu tarot card that every physical backer will get. So yeah, we're doing great. We got almost 150 backers, getting close to 150 backers, which to me is like incredible. Like 150 people want to read something I wrote. What? Like, that's awesome.
Well, to be honest, you're touching into a genre that is pretty much untapped.
Yeah.
Like historical fantasy, like people have touched fantasy, epic fantasy. People have touched of course they've done their street level comics, they've done their superheroes and everything like that. This is something that is pretty much like an uncharted realm that people would be like, okay, I
Yeah.
would love to see what happens here.
Yeah. We've gotten some pledges from people who are like, I don't know what this story's about, but you said historical fantasy and I love Roman, so I backed. Like, and they send me messages like that. I'm like, cool. Like, I'm happy you found it somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, you might have a lot of like history geeks that are just like, you know what, I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the part will be, did I do it right for those history geeks, for them reading it after the fact? Are they going to get pissed
Oh
that
yeah,
I've left out? Yeah.
oh yeah. You
We'll
better,
find out.
but you have to describe to them, be like, it's fantasy at the
Yeah.
end of the day. You know,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I mean, I'm not supposed to be factual. It is a
Yeah.
comic, and at the end of the day, there's a lot of fantasy that goes with this. So there's going to be particular characters that you're going to be like, oh, well, that never happened. They're like,
Yeah.
well, I made it happen. Comics, you can do pretty much anything. you know.
Exactly. Exactly.
So aside from this, you've done an anthology program with the
Hmm.
Tales of the Dispatch.
Yep. We've done three
Um,
volumes of that.
the 3 volumes of that. Now, this was pretty much, I would say, aside from the podcast and aside from your live streams, this was your beginning into
Hmm.
like getting a niche into writing short stories into your dispatch tales. Now,
Right.
you say like ultimately, of course, Immortalis was in your mind,
Hmm.
but what was the love project and putting Tales of Dispatch together?
So from the Dispatch, I'm just editor on. None of the tales are mine. Myself and Drew Lenhart of Snowy Works Comics. He kind of came to me. I'd had this idea of giving creators who wanted to be published but maybe didn't have any other venue of publishing, and doing an anthology. And then out of the blue, Drew Lenhart of Snowy Works messaged me and says, "Hey, I have this idea for an anthology." And I said, "Okay, me too." And so after some talking, we settled on a first time creator anthology. So all the stories that you read in Tales from the Dispatch, all 3 volumes, are first or second time creators. There's some second time in there, but they've people who've not been largely published or recognized within the comic world. And so their first stories are in there. We went through a submission process of through for each volume. Last year we published every story that was submitted to us because they were just so good that we couldn't turn any of them down. So we did two
Mhm.
volumes last year, and this year we were a bit more choosy. So we did have to reject a few, but we still have over 100 pages in volume 3 of just great storytelling. Anywhere from like 3 pages to I think the longest is 8 pages of storytelling, and you just get so many great stories in there. And it's these creators' first time being published in a volume and being able to hold something that they've created in their hand. It is honestly one of my favorite projects we do all year long at Indie Comics Dispatch is the anthology because every year I'm just amazed at the stories that we get in it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And as far as just the creation that's being put into them, I mean, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of first time creators out there that when they finally get to see their work on a page, it probably
Yeah.
blows their mind. And I'm sure that
Yeah.
happened to you for the
Oh
first.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
when I see the cover for Immortalis, I'm like, man, this really looks dope. But to be the
Yeah.
person that like actually like that idea came from,
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. So Immortalis issue 0 was part of the Nightfall 3 campaign. So when Nightfall 3 came out, Immortalis was printed in the back of that. And when I got my physical copy of that, I mean, I probably just sat there on the couch and stared at it for a good long time because I was just like, man, this is something that came out of my brain that's now on paper, published, and in the hands of people I don't even know. And so it is such a cool feeling to see something you've created in your hands, and just know that people are out there reading it, and some may like it, some may not, but that's okay. You've made something and put it out into the world, and that's to me that's awesome. Whenever anybody does that.
that's very true. That's very true. Now, if we're looking at modern day
Hmm.
comics that are pretty much being put out, and of course, you being a champion of indie comics for so long, and it now, how long have you been doing indie comic dispatch?
We are in year 3. So yeah.
Three.
So yeah, not 3 full years yet, but coming up on 2.5 years.
2019,
Early 2020. I
early
started.
2020. Okay.
Well, I mean, it's kind of tricky because we weren't called Indie Comic Dispatch. It was just my personal Instagram channel at first, right? And
Uh,
um, so it was probably late 2019 when I on my feed started featuring indie comic reviews and trying to promote indie comic creators.
okay.
Yeah.
And now, what would you say? as far as present day, what has been your experience with indie comics as opposed to the mainstream?
I turned to indie comics for representation. So I'm white, but I have 5 children who are black, and my black children were looking at my largely white comic books. I'm a huge Superman fan, and if you look through most Superman comics, it's wall to wall white people.
Yeah.
And so particularly my youngest son, Will, he was looking through it, and he was having a hard time deciding what he wanted to be for Halloween. I said, Bud, do you like Superman so much? Why don't you dress up as Superman? And he went, Dad, I can't. And I was like, why? He's like, because Superman's white. And that's when I realized that I had kind of failed that diversity test of what he was being exposed to.
Right.
So of course we had a very long conversation, and I started that day researching black superheroes. And once you start down that path, it very quickly leads you into indie comics, because there is a wealth of black superheroes within indie comics that you just cannot find in mainstream comics. And
That's
so,
true.
and then my daughter Maya followed down that same path. Maya wants to be a comic creator now, and but she she saw the other comics, was just kind of like, and then she saw Odina from Concrete Comics, and she fell in love, and she just can't wait to see the next issue of Odina. She can't wait to see Lux come out from Wingless Comics. And she's always scouring through my comics trying to see what she can find, and she gravitates those that represent her.
Nice. Now as far as like the epicenter of diversity that we tend to bolster within a lot of the indie comics that we read.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any publishers that are pretty much out there that you feel as though have stepped their game up? You've been doing this since the early 2020, and
Yeah.
you've had the opportunity to review, read,
Mm-hmm.
and have seen tons of them, and you've even seen them climb through the charts to be like very established publishing companies themselves,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
had the ability to publish other works from other great people, Wingless being one of them. Like, do you feel as though if we're going back to the time of 2018, 2019, and I note this because a lot of people were inspired by when Black Panther came out to
Mm-hmm.
basically bring up their own characters to fruition. And is there like just a couple to name that are pretty much step above the rest, still doing tons of work, and have always surprised you by the work that they're putting in?
Yeah. One of my favorite individuals is David Crownston of Kingwood Comics,
Oh,
Harriet Tubman, Demon Slayer. Um, he is just an amazing creator, and he's established his own imprint called Kingwood Comics. And they are starting to put out some fantastic stories. So keep your eye on him, because he is just a fantastic storyteller and an all around great person.
yes, sir.
Concrete Comics continues to release new titles. They just finished Watchmen #2, and they're getting ready to launch Acolyte 4, Odina 4, and a third one, another one from Onaji, that I can't think of the title right now.
Mm.
They are always expanding their offering. JL Johnson of Eniad,
Yeah.
that guy is just a machine. He is always outputting new issues. I think he's got #7 coming out soon. I mean,
Yeah,
which is
the
just,
the first one was a trade, so like his
yeah,
are now coming out as a trade, and he's going to put #7 out. So it's like
yeah, it's
story's going to
crazy.
continue.
It's crazy how much he puts out. I don't even understand that. He's got a newborn. Well, it was a newborn. He works a job, and he's just producing so much right now.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, other than Wingless, obviously, those are the ones that kind of immediately spring to mind.
yeah.
Dream Fury Comics, they are starting to expand their offerings with Kesha, I think it's Kesha Demon Hunter.
Oh, Keisha Demon Eater.
Yes, Demon Eater. Thank you. Um, and so they're growing what they're putting out too beyond their one title. And so yeah, there's so much good stuff out there right now, and so many new people trying trying to break into the scene too, that it's a remarkable time to be a creator and to be a lover of comics in general.
Yeah, definitely. I can
Yeah.
honestly say that. I think there was a point at the beginning of the summer where I think I probably backed 17 Kickstarter campaigns. But
Yeah.
even in that, like even we're talking about the crowdfunding aspect of
Hmm.
it. Like now, I mean, I got introduced to Indiegogo a little bit during that time,
Hmm.
but then Zoop came along.
Yeah.
And that was a whole nother thing that was basically completely transformative because it only does indie comics.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was put together by two people who've done digital comics in the past, Jordan Plotsky and pretty much have taken on a reins to be like, okay, there's other options
Yeah.
for indie comic book creators if they want to crowdfund their projects going forth. So it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be Kickstarter all the time. Kickstarter, of course, does a lot of indie comics. They've done
Yeah.
$30 million in indie comics in the past,
Yeah.
but they do products.
Hmm.
They do food, they do basically they do product
Games.
games,
Yeah.
homegrown Bath and Body Works type stuff and
Hmm.
everything like that. So like that's kind of been their forte is just to crowdfund anything. So now
Yeah.
you have a crowdfunding aspect where they strictly go to indie comics. Like we only
Hmm.
do comics. And they want to get into just more geek culture. Yeah, they want to do games and they want to do video games per se, like
Hmm.
RPGs, and then they want to do video games. But the fact that you have somebody even like taking into accord, looking at how much indie comics has been successful for Kickstarter and be like, you know what, we would like to do that, but strictly for this culture.
Yep. Yep.
And that's amazing because somebody just
It's
thought of
really
that. Like,
cool.
you know what,
Hmm.
this is what I want to do for them.
Yep.
I want to just do it strictly for that.
Just anybody coming to that site who's looking for something, it's a comic fan, and so you have your audience already selected. You don't have to worry about, because Kickstarters run on an algorithm just like everything else.
Yeah.
You gotta follow certain things, like certain things, for projects to appear in your feed of
Yeah.
Kickstarter. And so, but knowing that Zoop is available, and they're very selective in the projects that they put, so you're getting a quality project, and
Mhm.
that when you go there, you're only seeing comics. And it's such a cool thing. It's such a what a time to be alive, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how good could it be to be a
Yeah.
creator nowadays?
Yeah.
Because you almost have now you have a choice.
Hmm.
It's not like you're going to get booted out or anything like that where you're trying to put your project.
No.
You have a concept like Zoop that's basically taking forward and saying, you know what, if you're that close to your goal
Hmm.
and you're not making it, let's extend the campaign for you a little
Yep.
bit so you can reach it.
Yep. Yeah.
Why
Because
not?
how many times? I mean, I know I've seen several campaigns that are like maybe $100, $200 off, something that might seem large, but given another week, they
Yeah,
could do it.
that's
They
all.
could
That's
do it.
all it is.
Yeah. Yep. So
Definitely.
yeah, Zoop is putting more power back into the hands of comic creators.
Of course. Of course. Well, Brett, I gotta say, man, I look forward to the project and hopefully get it into my hands very soon. When are we looking for Immortalis to hit everybody's hands?
The Kickstarter should be fulfilled in October.
Mm.
We are fulfilling with Comics Wellspring, so the book is almost done. All the colors are done and lettering's happening now. So before the end of the campaign, the book will be finished. And so all we have to do is wait for the funds to drop from Kickstarter, and then send everything to Comics Wellspring, and they will print and fulfill and ship everything, and get it in everybody's hands.
Perfect, man. Perfect.
Yep.
Brett, this is like my first time outside of like doing like a live stream. I think I did one with Concrete like a very long time ago.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
actually got a chance to speak one on one, and this has been absolutely phenomenal, man. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Ditto. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And next 2 weeks, Immortalis still on Kickstarter, doing well so far, already funded,
Yeah.
and will be in everybody's hands by October. So, Brett, thank you for doing this again.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. So for Brett Hillesheim, I'm saying that correctly again.
You got it. You got it.
Yep. James Grandmaster Facts Boys. And we are out.